The Everglades is known for many things: gators, pythons, and that elusive skunk ape. The thing I like best is getting out on the water and the great fishing. On this trip, I'll be camping out with a group of friends on an island for 5 days to get my fix of fishing and also everything else that the Everglades has to offer. The beauty of the Everglades is that a lot of times you don't have to travel far to find fish. Today, the water was so smooth that I could see a school of baitfish being terrorized by bigger predators from about a half a mile away. Came over, and on my first cast I hooked into this fish. Unfortunately, the smooth water didn't last very long. Those clouds on the horizon were an indicator of the big changes to come. But for now, I'm enjoying fighting this fish. This is a Jack Caravel, one of the hardest fighting fish pound for pound, and one of the other nice things about them is that they always have a big appetite. Next up was a nice red. He bit on a 3-inch long white paddle tail fished on a 1/4 ounce jig head. To help encourage the strike, I also put Shrimp Procure scent on all of my jig bodies. Here's something you don't see very often. That's a remora falling from the redfish. Usually you only see these on sharks. Here's another look at that and a close-up of the remora in a 5-gallon bucket. Both the remora and the redfish went back to fight another day. During the next couple of days, the wind was really howling, so I had to head to the backcountry to find some sheltered water. As I would continue along my journey, the creek banks would narrow down. Occasionally, as I'd go around a bend, I'd flush out a group of birds like wood ibis, also known as Chokoloskee chickens. All in all, the trip never got boring. As I moved along, I would find open bays that provided great habitat for fish. Here I'm doing a skip cast to get underneath a dead bush that overhangs the water. Fortunately, it didn't take too long for Mr. Snook to come out to play. The bait that I'm using here is my white 3-inch long paddle tail on a chartreuse 1/4 ounce jig head. I don't know what was going on, but the snook were smaller and fewer than what I usually found in this area. At this point, I'm not holding that snook. He's just locked down on my thumb, and he'll just hold it until he's ready to swim off. As I continued to explore for fish, I startled an eagle ray, and you'll be able to see him jump right over here on the right-hand side of the screen. That was only about 20 feet away from me, and that really got my attention. This looked like a promising bank, and I'm just going to lay a cast up underneath the mangroves and see if anything is there. On my second cast to the same spot, I hooked into a nice redfish. One of the things that was really interesting about this trip versus other times I've been to this same spot is that I usually catch about 10 snook to about every redfish, but on this time around it was just the opposite. I was catching a lot more redfish than I was snook, but I didn't care. The redfish were pulling hard on the end of the line. My theory on this was that because the water was so murky because of the wind, that the snook had retreated to deeper holes where the water was clear, and the redfish had moved into their feeding stations along the mangroves. Another nice Everglades redfish. Here you can see how cloudy that water is, and if you listen closely you'll be able to tell that we're over an oyster bottom by the way you hear all that clicking in the water. Here I'm working another shoreline, and not all areas of a shoreline are created equal. Structure will always hold fish. Deep structure you can't see, but it'll be given away, like say for a dead tree. That dead tree is dead because birds have sat there and their droppings will kill the foliage. But on this particular case, I'm coming up on a cove, and I made one cast already to the point, but now I'm going to make a backhand cast down deep in there. And what you're going to see here is a redfish is going to strike. Now, redfish aren't necessarily scared by a second cast to the same area, and definitely with snook it can actually draw them out from deeper into the mangroves. So I guess with my point here is always try and get around structure, but also a second cast can be a good thing because it can ring the dinner bell that there's something active in the water and draw more fish to your bait. And I'll put a disclaimer on what I just said. If you're fishing in gin clear water, then a first cast is very important to get that strike. But on a day like today where you've got a lot of murky water, a second cast can definitely help draw fish out. Another trick, I just used the trolling motor to put a little bit more distance between me and the mangroves so that that redfish didn't get wrapped around a root. Here I'm maneuvering that redfish onto his back so he'll take a little nap. It helps in picking him up out of the water. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it sure helps. This guy didn't take any time to revive. He was getting out of Dodge. The wind and the waves through the rest of the afternoon continued to increase, and even so into the night. So the next day we decided to stay on the island just to be safe. Being landlocked doesn't mean you can't have fun. One time I was exploring an island where a hermit had built a pretty sophisticated cistern for fresh water. Today I started out with a great breakfast of biscuits and gravy. I would never take time to cook this unless I couldn't go fishing. After breakfast, I did a little exploring on the island. What used to be a thick mangrove shoreline has been changed drastically by the last 2 hurricanes to what you see now. New life is taking hold, and man isn't the only creature walking this beach. Life teems in the water and all across the expansive flat in front of this island. The bottom of the flat is firm and great for wading. So my friends and I go out to see if we can catch some fish, and it doesn't take long. So even in conditions with high wind, there are fish to be had. Well, after a great trip in the Everglades, it's time to head back to civilization. Even the cruise back to the marina is enjoyable in the cool morning air. Thanks for watching and joining in on this trip. If you have any questions or suggestions, please post them below. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so you don't miss out on the next adventure.